After my best friend, Sophie, married Ethan, I went to their house almost every day. After a while, I got a bit tired of running back and forth. For convenience, I decided to marry Ethan's younger brother, Alex. It was rumored that Alex had damaged his brain when he was a child and became mentally challenged, but I had met him several times. He was just a bit slow in his reactions. And most of the time he was lost in his own world and didn't like to interact with others. This was exactly what I wanted. Moreover, even if things didn't go as planned, being able to marry into the same family as my best friend, what's a little bit of hardship in marriage? But unexpectedly, the days after marriage were really wonderful. Ethan was truly a powerful CEO. He went to work every day to support the whole family and gave each of us 3 people $100,000 a month as living expenses. If it wasn't enough, we could ask for more. Alex's share naturally came under my care. So Sophie and I had a total of $300,000 every month. And we spent it on shopping and eating every day. We couldn't even spend it all. Not even close. Recently, there had been continuous heavy rains. Sophie and I could only stay at home, watching boy band performances and gossiping about others. We heard that Mrs. Johnson had found out about Mr. Johnson's mistress. Mr. Johnson had a mistress outside, and Mrs. Johnson discovered it. Because of this mistress, Mrs. Johnson was threatening to divorce. But Mr. Johnson refused to agree. So Mrs. Johnson also brought back a lover of her own. Now, as long as the 4 of them could get along well, that would be the best outcome. Ha ha ha. And listen to this. My sis said that her colleague's brother-in-law recently. The 2 of us chattered non-stop, talking until we were parched. Alex. I turned my head and called out. Alex, who was sitting in the corner, was startled for a moment and then tilted his head to look at me. Seeing that he had heard me, I spoke again. Honey, could you please get me a bottle of water from the fridge? He blinked his eyes, and the tips of his ears turned slightly red. He walked into the kitchen with an awkward gait. Soon, he brought me my favorite jasmine tea. Cold, warm. He meant that it was cold today, and it would be warmer to drink this. After watching me take a sip, he curved his lips and walked away satisfied. He went back to his corner and propped his head up. Lost in thought, Sophie clicked her tongue and shook her head. If Ethan knew that you've been bossing his precious younger brother around at home every day, he'd be so angry. No, I'm just trying to pull him out of his own world. Before, Alex had always stayed in his room, lost in his thoughts, avoiding people and the sun. After getting married to me, because I always liked to ask him to do things for me, he now just sat there watching us, lost in his own thoughts. He was so cute and obedient when he was being all dazed. In just this short time, there were over 99 new messages in the gossip group. It was obviously a big scoop. I quickly scrolled through the messages with great interest. After reading them, my heart sank. Oh no, I ended up gossiping about my own family. Ethan's first love was about to return home after finishing her studies abroad and inherit the family business. The 2 of them were a perfect couple, both powerful. People were digging up all the old memories of them and were completely obsessed with their relationship. They didn't care about Sophie at all. Damn it. I rolled up my sleeves, ready to have a showdown with them. Sophie snatched my phone and threw it aside. Why bother with all this? She looked indifferent. Men, if you lose one, you can just find another one. It's not a big deal at all. I felt sad inside. I wish I could be as indifferent as she seemed on the surface. She had actually fallen in love with Ethan a long time ago, but at that time, Ethan had a girlfriend, the very first love they were talking about, and they had a deep relationship. Later, the first love went abroad to study and broke up with him. Ethan never dated anyone again, until Sophie's family needed to have an arranged marriage with Ethan's family. Sophie took the opportunity and married him, but in the 2 years since their marriage, she still hadn't been able to win his heart. Apart from being prompt in giving money, Ethan had always been very cold towards Sophie and spent most of his time at the company. When they first got married, Sophie's eyes were dull. I couldn't help but suggest that she get a divorce, but she was reluctant and stubborn. I just love his attitude of ignoring me. If he really fell in love with me, I might get tired of him very quickly. There was nothing I could do, so I decided to marry into the family too. By spending a lot of time with her every day, she gradually became happier. But now, in this situation, I didn't think I could do anything to help. Rather than being dumped, it's better to take the initiative. Sophie took a deep breath and made up her mind. I'm going to get a divorce. Are you in? I nodded without hesitation. Yes. If you get a divorce, I will too. Our eyes met in the air, and then we both looked at Alex, who was still lost in his thoughts after a while, perhaps feeling my gaze. He turned his head to look at me, his eyes full of questions. Normally, he was in a state of blocking out everything. Only when I called him or looked at him would he come out of his own world. Sophie let out a sigh with a hint of guilt. This poor boy. I'm really going to miss him. I pursed my lips. Although Alex was very nice, it would be quite nice to spend the rest of my life with him, but the premise was that Sophie and his older brother also had a stable relationship. So it wasn't my fault. And no matter how good a man was, he couldn't come before my best friend. I held Sophie's hand and said firmly, best friends get married together and get divorced together. Sophie looked touched. Suddenly, Ethan's voice came from behind us. What are you two talking about? We both stiffened and turned around to look at him. Fortunately, the sound of the rain outside was loud, our voices were low, so he probably didn't hear anything. Ethan still had that cold expression on his face, but today he was soaked from the rain and looked a bit disheveled. Brother. Alex ran up to him in surprise. Ethan took a small step back, creating a bit of distance between them. I'm wet. Don't get too close. When facing his precious younger brother, Ethan's expression softened, and even his refusal sounded gentle. Alex then realized something was wrong and frowned. Change clothes. After saying that, he ran to the kitchen again. I'll make hot tea for brother. As soon as Alex left, Ethan's expression turned cold again. I'm going upstairs. Halfway up the stairs, when he saw that Sophie didn't follow, he frowned and reminded her, it's getting late. I unexpectedly understood what he meant. Today was Saturday, the day they fulfilled their marital obligations. Although Ethan was cold, he would fulfill his marital obligations. He did it on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays without fail. I looked at Sophie. She swallowed hard, and her face clearly showed, I'm not going to miss out on this opportunity. I rolled my eyes at her in disdain. I can't help it. After the divorce, where else can I find such a perfect guy? She whispered in my ear. Emma, I've been so out of balance emotionally. Don't hold back. Let's embrace our desires. After saying that, she ran up the stairs 2 steps at a time. Damn it. Where's my desires? Poor Alex was still in the kitchen making tea for his dear brother. I cursed and rushed into the kitchen, dragging Alex away. Sis, are we going to bed so early today? Looking at Alex's clear eyes, I silently shed tears in my heart. Oh, God, I feel so guilty. Yeah, going to bed early is good for your health. He didn't say anything more. He hugged my arm and soon fell asleep soundly. I stared at the ceiling. After a long time, I silently turned over. Silently, I opened Wattpad. The next day, Sophie looked radiant and full of energy. I had a resentful look on my face. Are we still leaving? She said hesitantly. Well, let's do this. On the day his first love comes back, I'll call him. If he lies to me and hides it from me, then we'll leave. I had no objection. Okay, then give him one more chance. But unfortunately, on the day Ethan's first love returned, Ethan suddenly said he had to go on a business trip, but someone in the group secretly took pictures of him having a sweet dinner with his first love. So the business trip was a lie, and it was a date instead. I was furious. I called him, wanting to give him a good scolding, but I called 5 times in a row, and there was no answer. Sophie turned pale and completely lost hope. You scumbag. Let's get a divorce. After sending the message, Sophie dragged me to pack our luggage in a hurry. We're leaving today. We did as we said. Half an hour later, we got in the car and drove away. Sophie opened the car window, letting the breeze mess up her bangs. Her expression was neither sad nor happy, and she started acting. Do I look like those tragic heroines in TV dramas? I felt so sorry for her that I stepped on the gas pedal even harder. Damn it, Sophie suddenly exclaimed. Emma, stop the car. I thought she was going to change her mind again, so I didn't stop. Stop the car now. Alex is chasing after us. What? I slammed on the brakes and immediately turned around. Alex had somehow followed us and was running after us, crying and shouting that he never went out. But he had actually chased us for over 2 kilometers. Enough. I feel sorry for him, Sophie said, tears streaming down her face that I also felt my heart ache. Should we take him with us? Sure. I quickly got out of the car. Alex ran over and threw himself into my arms, crying pitifully. Woohoo, sis, don't leave me. I burst into tears and sobbed as I tried to comfort him. After he calmed down a bit, I explained gently, your brother betrayed Sophie. He will bring a new sister-in-law home in the future, so we have to leave. He took a while to react, then sobbed and said, brother is bad, make him leave. Then will you live with us in the future? He nodded, afraid that I would run away. He held tightly onto the hem of my clothes. The old butler, who had just caught up with us, almost had a heart attack when he heard this. When Alex saw him, he hid behind me and declared, I want to go with sis. The butler looked as if the sky was about to fall. He stammered, ladies, is there some kind of misunderstanding? Sophie and I remained unmoved and both snorted. Alex was stunned for a moment and then also snorted. Mimicking us, the old butler was on the verge of a breakdown. And finally, he gave in the end. He went back muttering and cursing, and helped us move another 3 large trucks full of good stuff. When we left, the old butler was in tears. Could you please take me with you? No. I declined politely. You have to stay here and tell the truth. Otherwise, when everyone was gone and the house was emptied, I was afraid that Ethan would come back and call the police directly. After moving out, Sophie was in a state of self-deprecation for a few days and then started cursing every day. That scumbag. He must have been having a great time with his first love these days. Right. He doesn't even have time to divorce me. I had to be honest about this that I curled up in the corner and said timidly, don't you remember? You blocked all his contact information. Then didn't he think of contacting you guys? You also set my phone to block him. Even Alex's smartwatch wasn't spared. My voice was as soft as a mosquito's. Sophie was taken aback. If he really wanted to find me, wouldn't he have thought of a way? I sat up straight. I think you're right. Sophie's elder sister, after learning about our situation, generously booked 2 top-notch male models for us at her bar. She said, there's nothing that male models can't fix. If 1 isn't enough, 2 will do. Woohoo. That made so much sense. Sophie was so touched that tears flowed from the corners of her mouth. At night, after Alex fell asleep, Sophie and I sneaked out. When we arrived at the bar, we unexpectedly saw Ethan's first love. Vanessa was wearing a sexy black short skirt and was dancing closely with a male model dressed as a servant. They seemed to be having a great time. Sophie and I said in unison. Wait a minute. Sophie reacted. So Ethan was cheated on. I looked at her and nodded heavily. Yes. And he was cuckolded twice at one time. What good luck. Hearing this, Sophie smiled wickedly. Her bad mood for the past few days disappeared instantly. The corners of her mouth turned up, and she looked happy. How about you later? I quickly shook my head and refused. No, I'm afraid Alex will cry if he finds out. My main task today was to keep an eye on her. In case she got drunk, I still had to carry her back. Sophie's smile disappeared. She gritted her teeth and said, call both of them in. I sat in the corner and ordered a glass of low-alcohol fruit wine. I watched as Sophie was surrounded by the 2 male models, being coaxed to drink 1 glass after another with them calling her sis sweetly. I was bored and took out my phone to play Candy Crush. Just when I was really into it, the whole room suddenly fell silent. I looked up in confusion. Ethan somehow appeared out of nowhere, his face so dark it could drip water. Alex stood beside him, his lips tightly pursed, and his eyes accusing as he looked at me. Oh no. It's all over. Sophie wasn't afraid at all. She leaned back slightly, crossed her legs, and looked arrogant. Yo, isn't this my ex-husband? Seeing Sophie's attitude, the male models, who had been a bit flustered at first, suddenly gained confidence. They all twisted their waists and leaned coquettishly into Sophie's arms. Ethan's face was extremely gloomy, and the fists at his sides clenched and unclenched, then clenched again. Finally, he couldn't stand it anymore. He growled, get out. The male models shuddered in fear. They were scared. They scrambled out of the room. A few seconds later, the manager came in with a smile and presented a bill. 6 bottles of wine, costing 688,000, Miss Sophie. The boss said this number is auspicious and doesn't support waiving the change. I stared in shock with my eyes wide open. Sophie sat up straight at once, and she was completely sober from the alcohol. I knew it. Why was she suddenly being so nice? She was waiting for me here. She was listless and shed regretful tears. I'm so stupid. Really? Ethan stepped forward with a cold face and settled the bill, and he threatened. From now on, Sophie and Emma are prohibited from entering this place. Otherwise, the days are getting cold. Be careful of going bankrupt. Yes, sir. I will inform the boss immediately. Have a nice day. The manager left with a smile and closed the door behind him for a moment. The atmosphere in the room was a bit tense. Ethan pressed his temple and controlled his tone. Don't you think you should give me an explanation? Sophie stood up and said unkindly. What's there to explain to you? Here it comes. It's time to settle all the scores. That I quickly stood beside Sophie to show my support. Ethan was taken aback and said in disbelief. You came here to hire male models. And you're still being so righteous. I already said we're getting a divorce. Why do you care if I hire male models or not? Sophie smiled and started to be sarcastic. At least I'm doing it openly. Unlike someone who went on a date with his first love under the pretext of a business trip. Pfft, what a scumbag. So disgusting. I didn't lie to you. I really went on a business trip. And where did this so-called date with my first love come from? Ethan was confused. And as he spoke, there was even a hint of grievance in his voice. How dare he feel wronged? I took out my phone. First unblocked him from the blacklist. And then selected some chat records from the group and forwarded them to him. Ethan frowned and quickly read through them. What is all this? A bunch of people with nothing better to do. Sophie looked at him sideways and sneered. Oh, someone is getting anxious. Anxious. I just had a meal with Vanessa and discussed a business deal. There's nothing between us. Yeah. Just had a meal. And then disappeared for a few days after that meal. I had some trouble those few days. I didn't mean to lose contact. What a vague explanation. Sophie rolled her eyes and picked her ear. Keep making up stories. I'm listening. Ethan pursed his lips tightly, looking a bit angry. Is that all for your made-up story? Sophie sneered. Well, in a few hours, the department handling divorce affairs next door will open. Let's just finish the divorce procedures then. Absolutely not. You don't have a choice. Sophie didn't want to waste any more words. She grabbed me and was about to leave, but unexpectedly, just a few steps away, Ethan turned around and blocked her, then picked her up and threw her over his shoulder. Ah, you bastard. Put me down. I shouted angrily and blocked his way. What do you think you're doing? This is a matter between husband and wife. Stay out of it. I'll take her back and explain my innocence clearly. You should also think about how to explain to Alex. He didn't have a meal with a non-existent first love. I was speechless. I just changed the place to play Candy Crush. I didn't do anything. Would anyone believe this if I told them? Alex looked at me pitifully, as if he was about to cry. When I woke up and found you weren't there, I thought you didn't want me again. I was stunned. And my heart seemed to be hit hard by something. This is really my fault that I would even scold myself for being so heartless if I woke up in the middle of the night. That I quickly hugged him and patted his back gently to soothe him. No. How could I bear to leave you? Sis, I want to go home. Okay, let's go home. After these two incidents, he became extremely insecure. He stared at me intently all the way, and his hand tightly held mine, afraid that I would disappear again if he wasn't careful, even when we got home. He followed me wherever I went. He even wanted to follow me when I took a shower. When I refused, he looked at me pitifully, and his eyes were instantly filled with tears. But he held them back. In an instant, I felt my blood boiling. It said that a man's tears are a woman's stimulant. I finally experienced it today. I stood on tiptoe, wrapped my hands around his neck, and my eyes were hazy. I might have drunk fake wine. He blinked blankly. What do you mean? It means, I paused. leaned close to his red earlobe, and blew gently. I want to play a game with you. Okay, what kind of game? His eyes were as bright as the stars in the sky, and he looked at me expectantly. Be good. Sis will teach you. A few minutes later, he was a bit dazed and suddenly asked me, will sis do this with them too? Me. What? They want money, but I don't. All my money is sis's. Please choose me. Sis. Don't choose them. Okay. Me. What? I realized what he meant after a moment, that he was talking about the male models from tonight. That I really could cry. Who on earth said he was stupid? Where is he stupid at all? Seeing that I didn't speak for a long time, he exerted some force in dissatisfaction, but his voice was coquettish. Sis. I trembled slightly and kissed the corner of his mouth. This can only be a game between us as husband and wife. I emphasized. Just you and me. He smiled satisfactorily and rubbed against my shoulder and neck. Sis. Is this right? It seems to be the limit. Shut up. I don't know how much time had passed, but I vaguely realized something was wrong. Grimacing, I turned over and got on top, even if I was extremely tired. I couldn't lose my position in the family. In the second half of the night, I bullied him to the point of crying. Well, I was satisfied and ready to leave. Time to sleep. When I woke up, it was already afternoon. Sophie and I met unexpectedly in the stairwell. She looked haggard, with red and swollen eyes. I was furious and clenched my fists. Damn it, did he force you? Sophie shook her head, supported her waist, and looked on the verge of tears. Woohoo! What's scarier than being forced is when a man uses the bitter trick. My poor old waist. I heaved a sigh of relief and thoughtfully massaged her. Sophie squinted her eyes and enjoyed my service for a while, then said faintly, do you know what you look like right now? Ha! I've wanted to say this since I first saw you. You look just like a temptress that has absorbed all the essence. My face turned red with embarrassment. She got more and more excited and leaned closer to tease me. Take it easy. Sis. Don't tire out our little Alex too much. I pushed her away in embarrassment and anger. Shut up. She was always a bit of a pervert, and I was afraid of her, so I quickly changed the subject. What did you mean by the bitter trick? Explain it clearly. Sigh. We misunderstood Ethan. She sighed. He lost contact because he was exhausted from work and was in a coma in the hospital for 3 days. I was stunned, followed by a deep sense of guilt and unease, putting myself in Ethan's shoes. He worked so hard to support the 3 of us alone. Not only was he exhausted to the point of falling into a coma, but when he came back, he found his wife hiring male models. Goodness, he was really pitiful. I and the living room. Ethan, along with the old butler and his assistant, all came together. The criticism of us began. Good day, ladies. I can testify that during Mr. Ethan's 5-day business trip, he spent 2 days negotiating a contract with Mr. Smith from the Vigorous Group, and 3 days in the hospital. Assistant Lynn had a professional smile on his face and placed a stack of documents on the coffee table one by one. This is the signed contract we finalized. And here are also the itinerary and the hospital payment receipts. With every word he said, Sophie and I both tacitly lowered our heads a little more, wishing we could find a hole in the ground to crawl into. Assistant Lynn stood up straight, extended his palm, and made a gesture of invitation. Ladies, please take a look. No need, Sophie said awkwardly, waving her hand. We don't need these. Get to the most important part. Ethan coughed lightly and reminded. Assistant Lynn nodded and took out another document. On the second day of the business trip, at 6 p.m., Mr. Ethan and Miss Vanessa did have a meal, but they were also discussing work. This is the contract they finalized, but it hasn't been signed yet. Upon hearing this, the old butler beside him burst into tears. I knew it must be a misunderstanding. Woohoo, this family is finally saved. The old butler wailed uncontrollably. Assistant Lynn frowned, hooked his arm around the old butler's neck, and covered his mouth. Ethan stood up at the right moment, ready to take back the initiative. Sophie, next time there's such a misunderstanding, please give me a chance to explain. Okay, He took Sophie's hand and looked serious. Marriage is not a joke. We shouldn't mention divorce so easily. Sophie was stunned for a moment. Looking a bit confused, she opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something. But she didn't say anything for a long time. That I knew her so well that my temper flared up immediately. He has a mouth. Why are you still pretending to be dumb here? Sophie looked at me in shock. That I glared at her. My eyes fierce, she took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and blurted out everything at once. I thought you didn't care about me, didn't care about this marriage. I was just the arranged marriage partner you had to deal with for your family. I knew my place and didn't dare to compare with your ex-girlfriend, your first love. Now that she's back and you met again right away, I was afraid you two would rekindle your relationship. I was afraid that when you came back, you would tell me to get out and make way for her. I've had a crush on you for 6 years. It's okay that I didn't get a response from you, but if I was finally kicked out, that would be too embarrassing, so I'd rather leave on my own initiative. After saying this, Sophie felt much more relaxed. These things had been weighing on her heart for so long that they had already made her extremely tired. Now that she had said them out loud, she actually felt relieved. Ethan stood there stunned, his face showing a complex expression. He didn't say anything. And we didn't know what he was thinking. For a moment, the atmosphere froze again. The old butler, who was like an advocate for their side, was anxious. Oh, my goodness, the young master loves you. As the saying goes, where the money goes, the love goes. This is so obvious. Assistant Lynn nodded vigorously and chimed in. Yes, Mr. Ethan never hesitates to buy you gifts, but he's stingy when it comes to spending money on himself. Last time, when he was soaked in the heavy rain, I said we should buy a new set of clothes to change into. But he wouldn't spend the money. Ethan came to his senses and hurriedly covered Assistant Lynn's mouth. That's too much. That's a bit too much. The old butler looked at him with a look of disappointment. Young master, don't be shy. Shut up, both of you. Let me say it myself. Okay. Ethan looked like he had a headache after a moment. He sighed. Except for the first sentence, Uncle said. Don't listen to the rest. Sophie froze, her eyes full of disbelief. How could that be? Why not? Ethan shook his head with a bitter smile, as if thinking of something. One is stubborn and the other is always pretending. It's not easy for us to have lasted for 2 years. I shuddered and suddenly realized something. Could it be? Could it really be? At first, I did just see you as an arranged marriage partner and thought of just living together with you. But later, I was gradually attracted to you and unconsciously fell in love with you. He paused, and a bitter smile crossed his lips. Just when I realized this, I heard you say that you only liked it when I was cold to you. If I fell in love with you, you would get bored of me right away. After that, I had no choice but to keep pretending to be cold. She probably regretted it so much that she wanted to slap herself a few times. And, actually, me and Vanessa. Before he could finish, his words were interrupted by an angry shout from outside the door. Ethan, come out here. Speak of the devil, Vanessa stormed in angrily. You came at the right time. We can explain this together. Vanessa was stunned and followed his words. Explain what? No. Vanessa reacted and her anger flared up again as she got to the point. You should be the one giving me an explanation. We clearly agreed on a profit margin of 3 percentage points. Why did the contract you sent over show only 2 percentage points? Ethan waved his hand and casually replied. This isn't important. We'll talk about it later. Then what is important? No. Why am I being led astray by you again? Vanessa was so angry that her eyes were almost popping out. People are spreading rumors about us. They not only secretly took pictures of us, but also made up stories about us rekindling our old relationship. This has seriously affected my life. So I need to explain clearly that we have no old feelings, and there's no way we're rekindling anything. So, let them spread their rumors. You said it yourself that it's a rumor. Why should I prove my innocence? Ethan was taken aback. But I need you to. Oh, but what does that have to do with me? He took a deep breath and continued on his own. When you asked me to be in a relationship with you back then, it was just a deal. You wanted me to use your status to get along better in the Ethan family. Then, when I took power, you wanted me to use my influence to help you gain power. So we were just business partners. Right. Yes. Have you finished? Then can we talk about the contract? Ethan turned around and faced Sophie. Sophie, do you understand? He looked at Sophie intently until she nodded. Then he said with satisfaction, we've suffered in silence for so long. From now on, we should be honest with each other about everything. Vanessa. What? Vanessa was on the verge of a breakdown. Do I seem like a cheap person? Can we talk about the real business? Can you please listen to me properly? Okay. Go ahead. Vanessa pinched the bridge of her nose and took several deep breaths to calm herself down. I said, why did the agreed profit margin change from 3 percentage points to 2 percentage points? Ethan had a business-like attitude. After the company's evaluation, the maximum we can offer is 2 percentage points. You're lying. Aren't you just taking revenge on me because I laughed at your wife for hiring male models? Are you really that petty? I blurted out. So you were the one who tipped him off that day. I had always been wondering how Ethan had managed to catch us red-handed so coincidentally that day. So that's how it was. What? Are you blaming me for coming that day? Ethan gave me a cold look. Ah, no, not at all. I shrank back and tried to make myself as inconspicuous as possible. You guys continue. Go ahead. Change it back to 3 percentage points for me. Absolutely not. Come on. You're in control of the entire Ethan family now. Do you really have to be so stingy with me? Yes, I do. You. Assistant Lynn smiled and tried to smooth things over. Miss Vanessa. Mr. Ethan needs to support his family. Please be understanding. The old butler played the role of the supporting comedian. Miss Vanessa, you can tighten your belt a bit. At most, it will mean you hire a few fewer male models. Besides, too many aren't good for your health either. The two of them were like the best partners, making Vanessa so angry that steam was coming out of her ears. She laughed out of anger and suddenly looked at Sophie very enthusiastically. Sis, do you want male models? I have a wide network and a lot of experience in this area. Later, I'll introduce you to some top-notch ones. I guarantee you'll be more than satisfied. Jim, take the contract back and reduce the profit margin by another percentage point. No. Vanessa was so angry that she burst into tears. She was defeated when she left. She looked as if she was about to fall apart. Do you want some? Sophie quickly shook her head like a rattle. Ethan then looked at me. Do you want some? Me. Please don't involve me. I'm being good. Life returned to normal and became wonderful again. Ethan continued to go to work and earn money. And Sophie and I continued to shop and eat. We dressed up beautifully and went out to have fun. When we left, Alex looked at me longingly. When will you be back? Sis, it depends on the situation. It's hard to say. Oh, I'll wait for you. After saying that, he hesitated for a while, looking a bit conflicted. What's wrong, baby? Can you come back earlier? I'll miss you a lot. My heart softened completely. On a whim, I tempted him. Do you want to come with us? There are so many fun things outside. His eyes lit up, and he nodded vigorously. Yes. Then go and change your clothes. Why didn't you say so earlier? I had always thought that he liked to be quiet and only liked to stay at home and didn't like noisy environments with a lot of people. Sophie looked hesitant. Should we tell Ethan? I waved my hand. No need. He's not a child. Does he have to report to an adult when he goes out to play? That's not what I meant. I'm a bit worried because, after all, he's never been out before. It's okay. Don't worry. I'll stay by his side all the time. Alex, who was going out for the first time, was curious about everything. His eyes were darting around, looking here and there, and he became much more lively. I experienced what it was like to be a boss for once. He liked this. So buy it. He took a few extra glances at that. So buy it. He seemed a bit hesitant about that. So just buy it directly. Sis. He tugged at the corner of my clothes and whispered in my ear. Do we still have enough money? Silly boy. You underestimated your brother's financial power last time. After Sophie and I listened to Assistant Lynn's words and had a deep reflection, we decided to go to work. Otherwise, with Ethan supporting the three of us. He would be exhausted to death sooner or later. When Ethan learned about this, he showed us the company's financial statements. Sophie and I were stunned. All we could think about were zeros. There were too many to count. We simply couldn't count them all. Who are you looking down on? I can easily support 10 more of you. Of course, if you want to pursue your career and achieve your own ideals, I will still support you. Thank you, but no thanks. Who would want to go to work when they can just relax? I patted his shoulder and said boldly, we have more than enough. Don't worry. Hearing me say this, he obviously relaxed and then smiled, his eyes curving into a smile and showing two faint dimples that I was stunned for a moment. My husband is so cute. So cute. How can my husband be so cute? Hey, handsome guy, can I add you on WhatsApp? There stood a girl in overalls with a ponytail in front of us. She looked like a student from the nearby university town. I stood in front of Alex protectively. Little girl, do you think I'm a ghost? The girl looked at me with her clear but naive eyes, looking confused. No, you're alive. I felt so annoyed. I angrily put my hand on Alex's shoulder, leaned in and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Do you get it now? Huh? Her eyes widened like bells. I just heard him call you sis. And I thought, sorry. She quickly bent over to apologize, covered her face, and ran away in a flash. I was so jealous that I felt a sense of stuffiness, as if someone was coveting my precious treasure. Alex, is she pretty? Alex's face turned bright red. He touched the place where I had kissed him and looked completely dazed. I'm asking you, is she pretty? Huh? Ooh, I guess she is pretty. I glared at him fiercely. Not pretty. I continued to glare at him fiercely. I didn't see clearly. So is she pretty or not? No, I need to brainwash him. You know, that girl just now was actually a demon in disguise. She wanted to get close to you, then trick you into her lair, chain you up, not only starve you but also beat you up whenever she was angry, and finally, she would even dig out your heart. His pupils shrank sharply, and he looked terrified. You know what it means to dig out the heart, right? It's to cut open your chest first. And then, as I spoke, I made gestures with my hands. Stop talking. Alex covered his chest, looking extremely frightened. I was satisfied and got to the point. So remember, all the girls who approach you on their own initiative outside have bad intentions. They are all demons in disguise. You must never be deceived by them. Alex nodded solemnly. Only I'm a good person, and only I won't hurt you. Remember. Repeat it. I remember. Only sis is a good person, and they are all demons. I squinted my eyes happily. I was very satisfied with my teaching results. Sophie stood beside us with her arms crossed, and her eyes were almost rolling to the sky. Excuse me, can we continue shopping now? I nodded with a smile. At this moment, the old butler suddenly called. Where are you? Come back quickly. Something happened to the young master. When we rushed back, there was a fire at home. Smoke was billowing everywhere, and the flames were leaping high. Ethan was held back by the firefighters and was shouting out of control. My younger brother is still inside. Let me in. He broke free from the firefighters like a madman and tried to rush into the fire directly. Brother. Ethan suddenly stopped in his tracks and turned around in disbelief. Brother, it's dangerous. When Ethan saw that Alex was standing there safe and sound, he immediately relaxed. His legs went weak, and he collapsed to the ground. The firefighters quickly ran over, carried him out, and placed him aside. Then they started to put out the fire in an orderly manner. We quickly ran over. Ethan scrambled up and hugged Alex tightly. He was crying and laughing with lingering fear. You scared me to death. I thought. Thank goodness. It's great that you're okay. The old butler wiped his tears and sobbed. I just went out to pick up a package, and the house caught fire. We all thought you. Sophie and I looked at each other, our faces pale with fear. If I hadn't had the whim to bring Alex with me today, then wouldn't it have been? Just thinking about that possibility made me feel cold all over and short of breath. The fire gradually died down, the house was severely damaged. But fortunately, no one was hurt. Ethan called the police to investigate the cause. In the end, it was found that it was not an accident but arson. The fire was set by his cousin, Henry, because he had been expelled from the board of directors by Ethan, harbored a grudge against him. He knew that Ethan loved his younger brother the most, and Alex never went out, making it very convenient for him to take action. So before he planned to go abroad, he created an accidental fire, intending to burn Alex to death. After the incident, Henry was taken to the police station. The old Mr. Ethan came with a walking stick and scolded Ethan for being heartless. He blamed him for making a big fuss and damaging the family's reputation. Ethan's face darkened, and he ordered people to directly drive him out. After this farce, everyone looked unhappy. On the contrary, Alex, the person directly involved, was staring blankly at the painting on the wall, showing no emotion throughout the whole process. It was as if he didn't even recognize his grandfather, nor did he know that his cousin had tried to kill him. Alex was very smart when he was a child. He learned everything quickly and won first place in various competitions. Gradually, he became a bit famous. They took the opportunity to use Alex's reputation to invest in many educational institutions and made a fortune. Later, one day, Alex witnessed someone being bullied at school. He ran to stop it but was hit on the head and became what they called a mentally challenged person. After that, their attitude towards him changed completely. They regarded him as a disgrace to the family, ignoring his crying and screaming. They forcibly locked him in his room and didn't want him to go out and embarrass them. Once, Alex secretly ran out but couldn't find his way back. However, no one went to look for him. They even hoped that he would disappear by accident. By the time I came back from boarding school, a week had passed, when I found Alex with the police. At this point, his eyes filled with tears, and his voice trembled. When I saw him, he was fighting with a stray dog for garbage on the street. He paused to calm his emotions. After that, Alex stopped crying, making noise, and talking. He also didn't want to go out anymore. He just sat in his room every day, not knowing what he was thinking. I wiped my tears and hugged Alex tightly, sobbing. When Alex saw me crying, he immediately panicked. Sis, what's wrong with you? I sniffled. I love you so much that I'm crying with joy. Alex smiled and, imitating the way I usually comforted him, clumsily tried to comfort me. I love Emma too. Don't cry. Ethan turned his face away and secretly wiped his tears. Fortunately, it's all over. He was lucky to have met you. Emma, thank you. If it weren't for you today, he might have. He didn't dare to continue and took a deep breath. He looked serious and pleaded. Please, take good care of him. Yeah, I will. Happy days always pass quickly. At first, I got married without thinking too much, just to be close to my best friend. I didn't expect that by accident I would gain the happiness I have now, with the daily laughter and play. A new year was about to begin. During dinner, Ethan casually asked, "Where are you going today?" Alex wants to see the pandas. It's getting colder recently. Wear more clothes. It's almost the new year, and there will probably be a lot of people. You guys, got it. Stop being so talkative. Sophie interrupted him, handed him a peeled egg, and urged, "Hurry up and eat your meal. You'll be late for work." Ethan closed his eyes, took a deep breath, quickly finished the egg, and then drank a bowl of porridge. Then I'm going to work. Have a good time. But soon, he came back. He strode forward, picked up Sophie, and carried her upstairs. It's too cold outside. It's okay for the boss to skip work for half a day occasionally. Halfway up the stairs, he remembered us and waved his hand. You two can have a romantic time for two. Have fun. Alex looked at their backs. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "Isn't Sis Sophie going?" I was used to this and continued to eat my breakfast. Yeah, your brother wants to play a game with her. So she can't go. We'll go later. Play a game. His face turned slightly red. He secretly glanced at me and then quickly looked away as if he didn't dare to look at me. I smacked my lips. The creamy seafood chowder, which was so delicious before, tasted so bland today that I want to eat something good. Hee hee. Alex, do you want to play a game? He licked his lips, looking a bit tempted. But he didn't answer me immediately. He seemed to be ambivalent. Fine, that I've now reached the point where I'm not even as appealing as a panda. I leaned closer to him and bit his ear. Adults don't need to choose. They can have it all. Shall we play a game in the morning and then go see the pandas in the afternoon? His eyes lit up. Okay. I grabbed his hand and rushed upstairs, hee. So naive. After a long time, Alex's hoarse crying voice came from the room. Woohoo, sis lied to me. Extra chapter. Ethan's perspective. After working overtime continuously for 2 months, Ethan was full of resentment. Going to work was already annoying enough. And recently, it had been raining heavily every day during the week when his younger brother got lost when he was a child. It rained heavily for 3 days. He couldn't imagine how his younger brother had managed to get through it. Every time he thought of this, he would fall into deep guilt and heartache. That's why he hated rainy days. Ethan was soaked through and exuded a gloomy aura. He suddenly really wanted to go back and see her as soon as possible, just thinking of Sophie. The irritability in his heart seemed to ease a little. At first, he never thought that he would fall in love with her, since she was the arranged marriage partner from his family. He hated that family and, by extension, ostracized her very much. But seeing her originally bright eyes gradually dim because of his coldness, he felt an indescribable discomfort. A few days later, her best friend, Emma, came to their house every day. With Emma's company, she smiled more often. Sometimes, when he saw her chatting animatedly with Emma, her eyes full of life, he would be lost in thought and watch for a long time. He seemed to no longer ostracize her. He was even a bit happy. It seemed quite nice to have her in the house. But when he just realized that he had fallen in love with her, he accidentally overheard Sophie say, "If he really fell in love with me, I might get bored of him very quickly." He was confused. He had a thin relationship with his family, except for his younger brother. This was the first time he wanted to build a relationship with a stranger, but he learned that his feelings might lead to the termination of this marriage at any time. He didn't want that. He thought about it for a long time. He couldn't bear to let it go, since she liked his cold attitude. He would just keep pretending that way. She would always be his wife. Later, Emma suddenly came to him and said that she wanted to marry Alex. He was very surprised. Over the years, because of Alex's situation, there were also people who tried to take advantage of him, but their eyes couldn't hide their greed and disgust. But Emma didn't have that. She seemed to be the only one who didn't treat Alex as a fool. Once, he saw Emma competing with Alex for food. They were having a meal together. At that time, there was only one piece of barbecue ribs left on the dining table. Alex picked it up and put it in his bowl, but she snatched it away with her chopsticks. "I haven't had a single piece yet. You've eaten them all. Let me have a taste of this last piece." Alex was stunned for a long time and finally nodded after getting his consent. Emma tilted her head back and exaggeratedly put the rib into her mouth, her eyes squinting with a smile. Alex looked at her and slightly curved his lips. Sophie gave her a disdainful look. "You're the only one who has the nerve to compete with him." He was stunned. Over the years, Alex had suffered countless malicious treatments. After he had the ability to move out with Alex, he couldn't help but be overly cautious with Alex. He would deliberately let him have his way in everything, wanting to make up for him as much as possible. But he had overlooked that perhaps Alex didn't need that. Emma was different, and Alex could feel it. Alex used to not like going out, and his meals were even brought to his room. But recently, he could often be seen outside. Ethan asked the butler about it. "Every time Miss Emma comes here, the young master will come out to have his meal." But this made things even more difficult for Ethan. Emma was very nice in many ways, but in her eyes when she looked at Alex, there was no romantic love between a man and a woman. Ethan even suspected that Emma's sudden proposal of marriage was just to be with Sophie more conveniently. He didn't know whether he should agree or not. He asked Alex, "Emma wants to marry you. Are you willing?" Alex nodded. "I am willing." His answer was so quick and direct that it caught Ethan off guard and left him stunned. "Do you know what marriage means?" "I know. Sis explained it to me clearly, and I agreed." Ethan realized that he had fallen back into his old habit of being overly worried. At the same time, he was also surprised that Emma would first seriously seek Alex's consent before coming to talk to him about this matter. She was really nice. Well, birds of a feather flock together. The person who could become Sophie's best friend would naturally be a very good person that he had been being stubborn. Why did he have to demand that there must be love in a marriage? In the end, isn't marriage just about living together? As long as the two of them got along comfortably, that would be enough. Wasn't there also a lot of problems between him and Sophie even though they were different? And yet they still got married, didn't they? Thinking of this, Ethan felt a bit wronged. Clearly, his heart was filled with love, but he couldn't show even a bit of it. He had to restrain himself and pretend to be cold every day. Sometimes, when he felt really stifled, he could only release his emotions in certain ways. He could only tell her over and over again that he loved her deeply when she was fast asleep, after being recharged by Sophie. Ethan was full of energy again. So he immediately went on a business trip. There were some problems with the cooperation project there. He knew that Henry was behind it, but it was just the futile struggle of a loser, because the first thing he did after taking power this year was to kick Henry out of the board of directors, the old master. Seeing the promising heir he had cultivated finally defeated by Ethan, was so angry that he was directly hospitalized. Ethan felt extremely satisfied that he wouldn't let go of anyone who had ever bullied Alex. This business trip only took Ethan 2 days to resolve the crisis and sign a new cooperation agreement. Just as he was about to go back, he suddenly received a message from Vanessa. The agreed time has arrived. He was taken aback for a moment. Back then, when Ethan was struggling in the Ethan family, Vanessa had approached him. She wanted to have a relationship with him. He ignored her and thought she was crazy. "You're so boring. I thought you were good looking and wanted to take advantage of you. You don't actually need to have a real relationship with me. Just let the outside world think we are together." She said that her father was a man who had risen from humble origins. Once her grandfather died, he would bring back the illegitimate child he had outside and they would take over everything. There were rumors that her grandfather's health was deteriorating. "As long as my grandfather is alive, the identity of Miss Han still holds value. If you have a relationship with me, those snobbish people in the Ethan family will notice you, and my grandfather will also help you now. When you take control of the entire Ethan family in the future, you must also help me when I need you." Ethan asked warily, "This is a very risky investment for you. How can you be sure that I will succeed?" "Because you have no other choice. If you don't want your younger brother to be bullied, you can only stand at the top." He agreed. This was an excellent stepping stone for him. He went to the appointment. After meeting with Vanessa, the two of them quickly negotiated the contract. Then he was invited by Mr. Su and went to the second meeting. By the time he returned to the hotel, it was already 2 a.m. Just as he reached the elevator entrance, he suddenly felt a dizzy spell. He fainted without any warning. When he woke up again, 3 days had passed. The doctor said that he was suffering from excessive fatigue and gently advised him to exercise moderation in both work and other aspects of his life. He was unconvinced. He relied on that to survive, and there was no way he could be moderate, but he didn't dare to say that. When he turned on his phone, he was surprised to see a lot of missed calls from Sophie and Emma. This feeling was very strange. It wasn't the first time something had happened to him, but there was no one to tell, and no one was worried about him. He quickly called back. They must be worried sick, but the phone couldn't be connected for the moment. He also couldn't get through when he called Emma. At this moment, a message that Sophie had sent 3 days ago popped up on his phone. "You scumbag man, let's get a divorce." He was so scared that his hand trembled. He quickly pulled out the needle and bought a ticket for the nearest flight back home, but the result? The house was empty. The old butler ran out with tears in his eyes. "Young master, you're finally back." The old butler tearfully explained everything. He was completely confused. He had thought before that if he and Sophie broke up, Alex and Emma would probably follow suit soon, but he really didn't expect that when he and Sophie were really on the verge of breaking up, he couldn't even keep his own younger brother. Ethan closed his eyes and almost fainted again. He couldn't get through to either of their phones, and he couldn't reach Alex either. Traitor, when his own brother was in a relationship crisis. Instead of helping, he ran away with them. Traitor, traitor. Fortunately, he had a backup plan ever since Alex got lost when he was a child. He had given Alex a bracelet with a positioning function. He found them with the help of the bracelet, but only Alex was in the house. They didn't leave Alex behind when they left, but they left him alone at home in the middle of the night. Something was wrong. The two of them must have gone to do something sneaky. Just then, Vanessa sent him a photo. It was a photo of Sophie leading two male models, showing their backs. How useless are you that your wife is so pitiful that she has to hire male models, and she hired two at once. She sent an emoji of a sewing needle. Ethan was so angry that he blocked her. Fine, Sophie, you're really something. Although every time he thought of this incident, he wanted to teach Sophie a good lesson, but it could be considered a blessing in disguise. They cleared up the misunderstandings that had lasted for years, that he didn't have to pretend anymore. His life was more comfortable than ever before. Even going to work had become much more enjoyable. Work hard and buy gifts for his wife. Take this and revise it. Hand it to me before Friday. Yes, Mr. Ethan. By the way, is Vanessa's uncle causing her trouble recently? Yes. Check his accounts and invite him to the police station for a chat. Assistant Lin pursed his lips and looked at him, hesitating to speak. Speak up if you have something to say. Then you still lower the price for her. He glanced at Assistant Lin. Is there a conflict? I only promised to help her gain power. I didn't say I wouldn't make money from her. What? Do you think the commission is too much and you can't spend it? Do you want to give some to me? Assistant Lin was startled and quickly said, Mr. Ethan, I'll go check right away. Ethan nodded. At this moment, two photos of the latest necklaces from a certain luxury brand were sent to his phone. Wait a minute. Assistant Lin was sweating profusely. It's easy to spend. I've taken a fancy to a car recently, and I'm just short of this commission. Ethan was speechless. I'm stingy, not heartless. Look how scared you are. He handed his phone to Assistant Lin. Which of these two do you think looks better? Assistant Lin frowned and looked at them carefully, then said timidly, do they have any difference? He was speechless again and looked disdainful. Find a girlfriend to teach you. Assistant Lin. So, did single people offend you? But he didn't dare to say it out loud. He pointed to the first photo. Then this one looks better. I think the second one looks better. Assistant Lin. Then why did you ask me? Go and do your work. You're really useless. Assistant Lin. Ethan thought for a moment. Forget it. What if Emma tries to take it from her? It's better to get both, but since both of them would have gifts, he couldn't leave Alex out either. It seemed that he would have to buy 3 of everything in the future. Well, it's another day when he needs to work hard, just before getting off work. Sophie sent a message. Are you off work? Help me pick up a package. Ethan. Okay. I'll be there in half an hour. It's time to get off work. His wife is urging him to go home.